This is another serious, another well contested, another sensitive topic which I am going to undertake. I have been a little bit silent in not really making any video with regards to this topic because of its sensitivity, and you don't know who you might offend with your analysis or with your own point of view, or if your narrative does not suit or doesn't comply with the mainstream media. Yeah, you can actually offend a lot of people. Nonetheless, I begin the channel, or I begin the analysis or the topic by actually sending my sincere condolences and my heart goes out to the people and to the people of those nations who have fallen victim to any form of invasion. My heart goes out to the people of Palestine who woke up one day and saw that their country has been invaded and their lands confiscated and were no more. My heart goes out to the people of Iraq and Afghanistan when the enemy succeeded in crafting and hatching out an awful plan which involved the brainwashing of the world population, deceiving them and convincing them that Iraq and Afghanistan had weapons of mass destruction. Hence, it was legit to invade the sovereignty of those nations. My heart goes out to the people of Vietnam, who suffered immensely due to the unjust invasion of their land, dragging them into an unjust and unwanted war, looking at the topography and the vegetation of Vietnam. My heart goes out to them because they suffered miserably. My heart goes out to the people of Libya when those in Washington declared that Gaddafi must go, because those in Washington consider themselves as ruling gods amongst men, that they have the right to strategically invade the political system of another sovereign nation. My heart goes out to the people of Yemen, which has been classified as the region with the most or the worst humanitarian crisis at present. My heart goes out to the Uyghur Muslims, the Falun Gong spiritual group, and all those religious groups in China whose freedom of worship has been unjustly invaded. And my heart goes out to those whose bodies were invaded under the so called Health and Safety Emergency Act, those that were coerced into taking the poison 19 shot, those that were painfully oppressed as their rights were invaded, stating to them that if you do not take the poison 19 death shot, no job for you, no sports for you, no gym for you, no medical care for you in some extreme cases. And I can go on in picking out all forms of invasion that has happened all around us at various times in our life, in our lifetime. However, my final condolences does go out to the people of Ukraine. Obviously, as that is the bandwagon everyone has jumped on because the mainstream media has chosen to bring it to light because it does suit the agenda of the political elites, notwithstanding the fact that there are so many conflicts going on right now as we speak, which the mainstream media has turned a blind eye on. And I will not hesitate to mention them for all to take note of: the civil unrest in Ethiopia, that is one of them, in Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kashmir, Burma, Syria, the insurgency in northern Nigeria caused by Boko Haram, and the list can keep on going on and on and on and on. I must indicate ahead of time that this is going to be a very, very, very sensitive topic for many, as I will be touching upon the Russia-Ukraine crisis from all perspective and not only from the viewpoint or the angle of the mainstream media. So if you are easily offended and you do not have the capacity and capability, patience and intellect to debate issues in my comment section, please kindly do yourself a big favor and skip this video and wait for another of my coin showcasing video. Thank you very much. Greetings, my people. Welcome, and indeed a very warm welcome to my channel. And for those of you who have been subscribed to this channel and have been following the progress of this channel since the onset of its creation last year in late September, early October, I want to say a very big massive thank you to you and welcome once again to my channel. My name still remains and is none other than Biwa Rikikum Staka NZ. For those of you watching this channel for the first time, I want to say a very big warm welcome to you. I'm greeting you from the land of the long white clouds, the land of Aotearoa, the land of New Zealand. This channel was solely created and initially intended to showcase the best of the best and of the very best high quality, which is different from your high premium silver collectibles, silver bullion coins, past, present, future coins struck by mints from all over the world. However, looking at the state of affairs of our world today and looking at the amount of knowledge I have at my disposal, it is not enough for me just to sit back and keep quiet. And for that reason, I have decided to advance this channel further to include not only coin showcasing, but focus on areas of finance and financial investment, politics, geopolitics in relation to world money, world currencies, and how these might shape the future of the poor masses like us, either for the better or for the worse. I will be running through the list of topics or key points that I wish to tackle throughout the duration of this highly contested and sensitive video. And the key points include 1. The mysterious disappearance of the poison 19 squangemic and the sudden introduction of a war, if not World War III. 2. Solutions to the conflict which world leaders are not interested in, instead doing the opposite. 3. Who is actually suffering from the non-reconciliation and non-resolution of the conflict? Is it the billionaires, the Russian citizens, or the Ukrainian people? Question mark. Number 4, the comprehensive views from both directions of what actually caused the conflict. And last but not the least, where to from now. Alright, let us begin by questioning the sudden disappearance of the poison 19 bioweaponry squangemic, which I find very strange and suspicious. And lo and behold, the mainstream media has diverted all their powers, energy, resources into the so-called war or invasion, whichever one you call it, and has brought out for us a new villain, a new bad guy. If the virus wasn't a bigger villain than the plague that plagued humanity in the last 2 years, then Mr. Putin has been crowned, and indeed he has been crowned as a bigger villain of the 21st century that is responsible for the inflation and the higher gas prices, and not the money printing and quantitative easing they had done over the years. So all the blame now for all the inflation prices and all the high prices of our goods and services, the cars, the food, everything is now attributed to Mr. Putin. So it is no more associated with the quantitative easing that they've done throughout the last 2 years. Anyways, so I find this war event very suspicious. I begin to ask myself and the people around me, is this a planned event? Has Putin been in bed with the West to craft out another world event that will sweep humanity along and get them distracted, while the devilish elites plan their next big chaos to unleash on humanity? Or has Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, been in bed with the West to provoke Russia to a point where they need to react militarily to the solution or to the situation posed to the Russians at hand? I do not support any form of invasion, be it invasion of human dignity, human rights, or a nation's sovereignty. as mentioned at the beginning of the video, but I tend to think deep and think critically on why such things have occurred and what was the purpose of occurrence and what purpose was it meant to achieve. I rarely jump on the bandwagon like the sheep, the goats, the camels, the donkeys, the cattle, which is always initiated by the mainstream media, as we saw with the Black Lives Matter movement, although most people said the movement should have been All Lives Matter movement. However, I rest my case on that topic and won't deviate further. All I can say is this is a strange situation, a strange event in a strange period in time. It is quite interesting to see that no one is calling for peace with regards to this Russia-Ukraine crisis. The world leaders do not want peace at all. Instead, they have chosen a dangerous route for the poor masses of Ukraine by sending them weapons, so arming of civilians to be able to defend themselves. But we know how that has ended, and you don't have to look too far. Just look at what happened in Libya, Iraq, Syria, and I can go on for you to see how arming civilians or sending weapons to them can actually cause the degradation and disintegration of a society and a country as a whole. The solution is never to engage in war or send arms and little weapons. In my view, if the world leaders really wanted peace, the leaders of those nations, be it Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, be it the Prime Minister of Germany, or even Joe Biden and the rest of the so-called EU leaders, could have easily flown to Russia and have sat down with Putin to discuss possible solutions, which will definitely come at a compromise of Ukraine or even Russia as a superpower, as I feel that it is better to compromise and live a peaceful life in Ukraine than to reach this miserable situation that we are right now. I believe that the world leaders who spoke out or who normally speak out or speak out of the belly of their demons, and the world leaders who take inspirations from their devils, has deliberately and dubiously and intentionally steered this situation in a direction that it will be a long and prolonged war which can easily last, I don't know, God knows how long, as I won't even try to speculate here, as I do not have a crystal ball on how long the war will last. The West started with the unlawful confiscation of the wealth of Russian billionaires, which is extremely sinful, shameful, and unlawful to seize and confiscate the wealth or the earnings of a human being because of the action of another person. So in the bid, they did this confiscation in the bid that the Russian billionaires will stage and craft out a coup that will see Putin beheaded, as they achieved in Libya with Gaddafi. I see two things with this devilish strategy of confiscating the wealth of billionaires. One strategy is to witchcraft engineer the entire population. By the way, if you have not watched the video with regards to witchcraft engineering and the introduction of teleportation machine in the modern age, kindly set that up in my channel. You will find it. It is along those lines of what I want to explain now. So one of the strategy is to witchcraft engineer the entire population into thinking that it is lawful and right to confiscate people's wealth because of a certain situation. And by them succeeding in getting the entire sheep pool population to accept this ideology, what happens next? They start to confiscate the wealth of normal human beings like you and I under any devilish emergency law or any situation that they can plan and execute at any given time. Mind you, Canada is an example. Yes, Canada is an earlier example of how a devilish law was crafted and enacted in place to seize or to trap the wealth of people who donated for the cause of freedom. Do not forget that lesson for each and every one of us. Okay, I will continue to ask myself, what is a Russian billionaire's concern with what Putin does with Ukraine? A billionaire does not have the capacity to influence any decision that Putin and his advisors have set out to undertake. Just imagine the owner of Chelsea Football Club, Abramovich. I mean, he is more worried on how to move Chelsea forward, be it signing players, be it paying the wages of the players, the coaches, the management staffs, rather than what Putin does with Ukraine. I sincerely do not buy into this unjust attack on Russian billionaires, Russian players, Russian athletes, be it Nikita Mazepin or any of the Russian stars. I am not in support of unjust attack on anybody, even unjust attack on the innocent people of Russia based on Putin's action. And to show you that humanity has been tossed into the garbage bin, many people came out and were supporting such unjust actions taken on Russian athletes, players, billionaires, as if these people are not human beings like you and I. Just because they are Russians doesn't mean that you should hate them. No, they are as human as you and me. Yet, the same people or the same humanity did not stand up to sanction Israel on their illegal occupation of Palestine, because as you all know, Israel is always in bed with America. Humanity never stood up to sanction China on their violations of human rights on various religious groups across China, or the reclamation of Hong Kong as a sovereign state. Neither will humanity stand up, not if, but when China decides to invade Taiwan and reclaim Taiwan as part of China, because China is where all the Western industries are located. Hence, they prefer humanity to go down the drain than to risk losing their loaf of bread or mountain of gold, if you know what I mean. Yes, humanity never stood up even to sanction the ruling state of the world for all their war crimes they have committed against nations like Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and the list goes on and on. But humanity is quick to defend the United States and gives them the thumbs up to carry out such atrocities because it is the United States. Funny enough how Israel has not bothered themselves to come into the limelight to criticize Russia, because they know they will be definitely guilty of doing the same thing they are accusing Russia of. Hence, it will be the case of pot calling kettle black. The mainstream media will continue to succeed in brainwashing the sheeple population and will continue to succeed in getting the sheep, the goats, the camels, the donkeys, and the cattle to jump on the bandwagon, because the mainstream media realize very well that many do not do their research and are incapable of critical thinking and critical analysis of any situation. Hence, people believe everything they are told. This is the unfortunate reality. I would like to move to who is actually suffering from the non-reconciliation and non-resolution of the conflict. Is it the billionaires, the Russian citizens, or the Ukrainian people? Well, all I can say is that the whole world is suffering from this war. Yes, the whole world is actually suffering from this war. In as much as the United States has launched unlawful sanctions against Russia and has weaponized the US dollar. The US dollar is now your standard AK-47, which people are applauding. But the people who are applauding the weaponization of the US dollar against Russia, similar to how they weaponize the US dollar against Iran, do not even know that the US dollar has been used as a weapon of poverty and impoverishment against them. In fact, the whole fiat monetary system is a tool and a dangerous weapon of enslavement against humanity, be it through taxation or inflation, which I will not go into, but many are oblivious of this situation. It is clear that none of the sanctions against Russia has worked so far, but Russia has managed to checkmate the West in their own devilish game, which continues to make me wonder, is this a planned and orchestrated event to push humanity in a certain direction? I have no clue, but all I know is that the Russian people are suffering, no doubt. As an average, I'll give you an example. As an average mom and dad living in Russia who used to trade and do business with the outside world, all in a blink of an eye, have seen their income and source of livelihood vanish before their eyes due to the restriction of trade, which is no fault of theirs. Although those who were fortunate enough to be dealing with the eastern nations such as China, New York, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and the rest of them would easily survive the sanctions, or Belarus. But on the other hand, people from the West, as well as people from around the world dealing with Russian products, can easily see their livelihood wiped out as certain countries do not allow importation of Russian products. And it has come to my mind that delivery companies and cargo lines have seized routes to and from Russia, which is absolutely devastating for those whose businesses were dependent on Russian goods. As for Ukraine, it is an unfortunate situation for them, as I do not think any US forces are on ground to defend them. From my understanding and from the understanding of those people who are on ground in Ukraine with first-hand information, it is clear that the Ukrainian people are left to defend themselves alone. That is, if the sources are legit. So it is clear that no one is profiting from the war except those selling the weapons and those manufacturing the weapon. So all profit is going to the military industrial complex, while human lives are being wasted, and no Western leader has hastened towards the negotiation of peace and what can be done at all cost to negotiate peace between two parties, which is very sad and disgraceful, because the world leaders know deep down inside their hearts that the devilish ones, in quote, that they want this crisis to continue for a bit longer to help them in whatever agenda they have set out to achieve at the expense of the sleeping and hypnotized masses. I will move to touch upon some of the comprehensive views on what has caused the conflict. Those with intellect and intelligence will know that this issue did not arise yesterday. It has been an issue which has been brewing for over many years now, as some might claim of up to 8 years in the making. I do have some Ukrainian friends here in New Zealand. I have spoken to them about the issue. Some of them do have family members over there in Ukraine, and they have basic knowledge. They basically said that Putin and Russia wants to wipe them out of existence. That is what they are saying. And the European countries have basically deserted and abandoned them, the Ukrainian people, leaving them to defend themselves alone. Well, that is quite an interesting view from people, from the information that I've gotten from people, or this is just the basic idea I get from the Ukrainians with family members living there in Ukraine. I will move to a more technical and more strategic insight on the issue. No one has the Russian playbook, so we only need to decode what we think is going on based on intelligence, history, and experience, which will allow us to access what is currently at play over there in Russia or in Ukraine. The famous and most popular allegation for Russia's invasion of Ukraine is the threat of the expansion of NATO forces towards the border of Russia. But this is not necessarily the start of the problem. The problem has been decades in the making when Boris Yeltsin stepped aside and Vladimir Putin came in, I think, in around 1999 2000, grinding to a halt the process of letting the United States and other nations run Russia over Russian sovereignty, which allowed the empowerment of the Russian oligarchs, or let me say the billionaires, who will come in and swoop the Russian wealth or steal the wealth meant for the Russian people and make it their own. So Russia was no longer viewed as an economic opportunity since the installation of Vladimir Putin, and since Putin stopped playing along or playing the game that Yeltsin played with the West. So the West started viewing Putin as a threat. So this is now a combination of NATO expansion and a leader who has now been viewed as a threat. Where Putin, in his mindset, has recognized that NATO is no longer about bringing a security framework to cover Eastern Europe and preventing Eastern Europe from becoming like Yugoslavia or confronting a Yugoslavian type breakups and conflicts. So, as the NATO expansion went on, Putin being perceived as a threat by the West, Russia has been perceived as a threat, and that threat has been magnified in the eyes of the former Soviet satellite states, such as Poland and the Baltics, who have no love and affection for Russia whatsoever. So those countries have magnified the notion of a Russian threat, and from the perspective and from the viewpoint of Russia, they see NATO's expanding themselves. Sorry, they see NATO expanding themselves towards the border of Russia, signaling a direct threat to Russia. But the funniest part is that Russia did speak about this issue from what I can remember in the year, I think in the year 2007. Yeah, in the year 2007, when Putin gave a political speech and addressed the UN Security Council. Although the West did not expect the magnitude of such speech from Putin, as they thought that he would come in front of them and bow down to the Western masters and surrender to the agenda and start playing the game where Yeltsin, the former president, left off. However, Putin's speech was not well welcomed, as Putin blasted the European leaders being puppets of America. And Putin went on to accuse America of imposing singularity on the world. Putin also blasted Europe and America on what they have done in Iraq after the 2003 invasion and occupation. After that speech, instead of NATO and the United States to listen to Russia's concerns, they doubled down in 2008, the Bucharest Security Summit for NATO, for which Ukraine and Georgia were formally invited to be members of NATO. How did Russia view this? Okay, that's an interesting question. We know how they viewed it, looking at the statements of Putin and others at that time, but most especially and most importantly, the statement of William Burns, who was the US ambassador to Russia. He wrote a memorandum which came out in February of 2009, and the title of that memorandum was No Means No, stating that when the Russians say no, that the expansion of NATO into Ukraine is a red line, they mean it. William Burns went on to say two important things. Listen up. The first one was the Russian concerns are real, and they are not joking about it, that the West should not dismiss the concerns of the Russians. 2, if the West goes ahead to dismiss these concerns of Russia, that the consequences in the future will be that Russia will have no choice but to militarily intervene, which will lead to the destruction of Ukraine, the loss of Crimea, and the loss of Donbas. This memorandum was written in 2009 and is there for you guys to go and have a look at it. Alright, the last topic The last topic, where to from now? Well, all I can say is it is now too late, as the battle line has been drawn. As the world leaders never negotiated for peace and never sought to compromise in order to make sure that the Ukrainian people were safe and had a stable life. Sending weapons to Ukraine will not secure, neither will it save the lives of innocent Ukrainian citizens who do not want to be part of the Western agenda and propaganda. What I see from my own observation going on now with Russia is a technical military response, a military operation from Russia with two primary objectives. One is denazification, which means the destruction of the nationalist military units that have incorporated personnel which have embraced neo-Nazi ideology, and the destruction of such political parties that breathe life into such ideologies. To the demilitarization of the Ukrainian military. What does that mean, you might ask? Well, if you ask me, it means that from what I know is from the onset of 2015, the Ukrainian military has been trained by NATO to be a de facto extension of NATO. So even though Ukraine wasn't a member of NATO, their military were a de facto extension, or their army were a de facto extension of NATO. What does that mean? It means that 30 of the battalion are considered to be interoperable with NATO. It means, or the meaning of that, it means that you can plug out a German battalion from the German division and plug it in a Ukrainian battalion, and it will function smoothly, perfectly, nothing. But for the Russians, it was unacceptable. And one of the goals is to deconstruct the NATO military infrastructure that exists in Ukraine now at the moment. So these operations are to achieve two primary political objectives from the viewpoint of Russia. Is it going to be an easy operation for Russia, looking at the state of what is currently happening as per the mainstream media, how they are magnifying the issue? I say no, it's not going to be an easy operation for Russia, as this is a kind of a complex operation, I must say, looking at the fact that Ukrainian forces are well trained, well skilled, and highly professional. So let us buckle up our seatbelt, as this will be a long conflict from my understanding, and I hope I am wrong. Really, I really hope that I am wrong in predicting that it will be a long one. God knows how long it will last. People say Russia has every right to defend itself, the same way Russia has what am I saying? People say that Russia has every right to defend itself, the same way Israel has the right to defend itself against Hezbollah in Palestine. As for me, my response is always peace, and always seek to negotiate peace, compromise where possible, and avoid any form of provocation and altercation. And indeed, I end this particular video because I am almost getting tired, and the sun is going down. It's Ramadan. I am fasting, so I won't go more than necessary, but I will end this video by asking the Almighty Allah to aid those who are suffering and protect and comfort those who have been displaced, traumatized, injured, bruised, and battered from any form of unjust invasion. And indeed, we pray for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Burma, in Kashmir, in East Turkestan, in Ethiopia, in northern Nigeria, in Democratic Republic of Congo, and all of humanity who are suffering and have been ignored by the mainstream media and by world leaders. All I can do is to pray that Allah Almighty, in His infinite mercy, will ease their suffering and grant peace and stability to the world. And with that, thank you very much for watching yet another of my video, and I will see you in my next geopolitical and political video. Thank you very much, and peace to the world. Stay safe.